Hey guys, this is Kevin Kim with Precision Powerlifting Systems. I'm going to do a video today on the rate of progress in powerlifting. I think this is it's a really important topic to understand, I think, for this sport in general, for any sport in general. But it's also a topic that I've struggled with over the years. You know, especially when I first started, when you have this lack of experience and this lack of maturity in a sport, you just want everybody to get better and get better and get better. So you'll push things a little bit differently, and I think it's just the American way where you just really want to step on the gas pedal and, you want to shortchange the journey to get there. The faster that we can get there, the better that it's going to be. And I think that gets more and more prevalent the older we get. I remember when I was playing soccer and I'm, 4 years old, I wasn't thinking about what it was going to be like to be 18, 19, 20. I wasn't thinking about getting a college scholarship or doing any of those things. I was just having fun, building a base, having fun. And I think initially that's really important. So when we first start something, we need to have fun in order to allow us to get buy-in and to really enjoy it for the hard training that's going to come later. Because as you get older, so once I started to get a little bit older, you become a teenager, it starts to become more competitive. It's not as fun as it was when you were a kid. And in order to develop high-level performance, fun kind of goes away sometimes. And what you end up learning is you learn to have fun by embracing the process, hanging out with your teammates, practicing hard, going through that shit together, building that camaraderie, the games, the feeling of, beating an opponent or, those letdowns that actually make those bigger moments that much bigger. There's all those pieces that come in later on, and you learn to have fun in different ways. And for this sport, I think a lot of people get into it in their 20s where they don't necessarily have those experiences, or they do have those experiences, but now they're starting a new one, and it's hard to go back to those initial feelings of being a beginner and being patient and doing all of those things, right? And as a coach, especially where it's such a competitive market, being a powerlifting coach, that's all I coach. I don't have a day job where I do something, I collect a check, and then I coach a few people. I don't do personal training all day long and then have some powerlifters that I coach too. I don't do computer engineering. I don't try to pretend that I'm trying to become a fucking actor. There's the things that I do, all I do is coach powerlifting. That's it. And I've been involved in high-level athletics my entire life. And even then, when I first started coaching, I tried to push progress on other people. I tried to push it on myself as a lifter, and it didn't work well that way. But the good thing is we can learn from our mistakes and we can get better and we can start to kind of develop these ideas behind what the process actually looks like for the rate of progress in powerlifting. So to start this off, I want to kind of talk about the Russian long-term athletic development program. So what they have there is they have schools, and you can major in something like powerlifting, right? You go to this school, you have math, science, powerlifting type of thing. So every kid under the age of 8 has done gymnastics, so it builds this movement base. And then from 8 to 10 years old, they could start joining these schools. And in these schools, they start building, basic general physical preparedness and athletic skills. It's not sports specific yet, they're just building general skills. And over time, as they go through these programs, the GPP stuff starts to go away, the sports specific stuff starts to come in. And as they mature being an athlete over the course of time, the comp lifts make up the majority of their programs at some point once they reach a certain level. Now, the thing with these schools is once you get to a certain point, if you're not getting better, they give you a certificate and you're kind of kicked out of the school. So the cream rises to the top in these situations here. So by the time they get to somebody like Boris Shako, they've gone through these schools and now they're on the national team. So they're master of sport and international competition level lifters. So they're very top level lifters at this point. Here in America, it's more of a free-for-all. We don't have schools. So what I tend to get for lifters is people in their 20s with very limited barbell experience. And when this happens, everybody's kind of starting at a different level, right? It's not like they start in this grade and they develop these skills, and then they move to the next grade, they develop these skills, and they keep developing those skills. And just like any sport, not everybody makes the varsity team in high school. People get cut and they go and do other things. So that's how it is set up there. But in an amateur sport where everybody can participate, which I think is an amazing part of powerlifting, because I think it offers competition to everybody, and competition literally can create so many positive life skills for people. So what we get is we get people who start at different spots. So let's say we line up everybody on a line right here, and we tell everybody to step forward when something applies to them. And we say, you played sports up to the age of 18 years old. Everybody who played a sport up to the age of 18 without any breaks, take a step forward. And then from there, how many of you played the same sport from the time you were 5 up until the time you were 18? Take a step forward. How many people have lifted weights before? Take a step forward. And then you could even have, based off of how much muscle mass, muscle fiber type, all of those things are going to create even further steps forward. And then let's say we're setting everybody up where they start. There's a finish line, a set distance away. So the more things that you have working in your favor, the closer to that finish line you're going to be, right? And whatever you want to say that finish line is, qualifying for the Arnold, prime time at nationals, something like that. Wherever that finish line is, those people who've taken more steps are closer to it. But it doesn't mean those people that are still stuck in that first line can't get to that finish line. And in some cases, they're going to get to that finish line before other people because they possess certain values and they have a certain work ethic and a certain grit that allows them to keep stepping forward even when times get tough. And this grit and this ability and these values in the process are something that a coach is supposed to build up. And it's stuff I've kind of talked about in some other videos, and I'll continue to talk about in future videos as well. But for today, we're talking about the rate of progress. So some people already start pretty far away from that start line. And what can happen then is you kind of get this false sense of confidence or how the process actually works. So in the first 3 to 5 years, you're going to probably have some pretty good success. It's those beginner gains that we talk about. And then after that, it gets a lot more difficult. And I do think that a big part of powerlifting, a big part of the problem within the sport and why everybody quits within that time period is because once you get to that part where PRs aren't coming easily anymore, you might start having a few more nagging issues popping up because you're trying to really force those results to happen. It gets really frustrating. Frustration wins, those people quit. The ones who stick with it in the long run, they just end up having a lot more grit than the ones who don't. So I guess one of the biggest questions, right, is if somebody's only going to last 3 to 5 years, do we just push them as hard as we can in that time period and see how close to the finish line they can get? Or do we actually instill in them the values and the character traits that sport has taught me personally? So I've developed the discipline, the work ethic, grit, perseverance through adversity. All of those pieces were taught to me through sport. And powerlifting offers this to people who may have never learned those skills earlier on. It's the one sport that you literally can be competing on the same platform as a world level competitor. There is not another sport that you can compete with those world level competitors on the same platform and not have their skills negatively affect you. It's not like I'm trying to play football with Tom Brady or basketball with Michael Jordan. It's like playing football next to Tom Brady or next to Michael Jordan. So it allows you these opportunities to compete on these larger platforms next to those people, but at the same time just challenging yourself enough and just worrying about where you're going to cross that finish line. So it's a very unique experience in sports. And I think it's a unique experience that offers people something that other sports can't. And I think it's our goal as coaches to instill these values so that they stick with it beyond that 3 to 5 years and they can truly start benefiting from the character skills that high-level sport can teach people. And everybody, especially in an amateur niche sport, everybody has the ability to at least qualify for nationals. I understand the national qualifying totals in the USAPL went up quite a bit. Everybody can achieve those numbers. There's not a single person competing now that doesn't have that opportunity. Just some people are going to be starting on that line a little bit further from the finish line. So it's going to require a little bit more grit, a little bit more hard work, a little bit more attention to detail. Where you have some people who are so close to the finish line that they can ignore technique. They can, for some reason, they might have a genetic predisposition to being able to recover better, or they're just younger and able to recover better. So they can do more work in the gym. They might not have a full-time job. Maybe they're still living in their fucking parents' basement. So they're not worried about regular life stuff. So all their stress can just be targeted into the gym stuff. And if they're already close to the finish line, you do those things and then you see them at the finish line and their technique sucks, they're doing a ton of volume, and then you want to mimic it. But if you're way back here on this start line and trying to mimic what somebody did way up there, you're going to fall flat on your face long before you ever get to that point. And this is something that, as a coach, I have really struggled with hard over time. So when I first started working with Shaco, it's obviously a lot of percentage-based training. That's RPE-wise, it's pretty light. It's a lot of work, and it was very hard, but it's very light, and it's very, requires you to be very patient. And for me, so there was this one instance where when I tested one of my maxes, he would always tell me what to put in the bar, so either 102.5% or 105%. So I had done that weight and I'd hit it, and then I'd put 20 more pounds on and then hit a PR there. And I sent him my video and I'm fucking amped. I'm like, yeah, I just hit this 30-pound PR or whatever it was. He literally, his response to me was, you weren't supposed to put that weight on the bar. Right? It's one of those in my head. It's like, why isn't he excited for me? I just hit this huge PR. He should be pumped up just like I am. And that just wasn't the case, and I didn't really understand it at the time, but I understand it more now, about the patience of the process. That training is to build and stabilize performance, not force it to happen, right? So if I'm making a 30-pound jump in a lift, the chance of me repeating that effort is probably slim to nil. But if I made those 2.5 to 5% increases every so often, and then I run the program with those percentages under those new percentages, and then I let that weight stabilize, and then I retest myself, let that weight stabilize, retest myself. That's how you get stable performance consistently over time, right? And of course, don't get me wrong, it's never going to be linear like that, but it's a thought process that I want everybody to keep in their head. But as a lifter, I had a very hard time dealing with that, and there were a number of factors with this. Yes, my inexperience and my immaturity in the sport itself, I think, definitely played a role, but there were other character issues that were a problem there. One, I think I valued myself as a coach based off of the weight that was on that barbell. So my very first meet, I had no intentions of coaching powerlifting. In fact, I didn't even know what powerlifting was till a couple months before it. I mean, I knew that it was the squat, bench, and deadlift, but I didn't know the rules or how a competition worked or anything like that. I go to my first meet, I'm 190 pounds or so, I squat 315, and I'm at the top of the fucking world. I literally watched Greg Panora squat over 700 pounds that day, raw. And so for me, I didn't care what he did. I had hit that 315 and I was having fun, top of the world, all of those things, right? But then I started working with Shaco just because all I wanted to do, I just wanted to learn about the sport. The guy who I worked for at the time said he wanted to make the gym a competitive arena for strength athletes. So I'm like, man, I better learn about these strength sports. So I hired Shaco and I just wanted to learn about the sport. I made an intern who was a friend of mine start training with me. And so she started to do very well. And then people started to want to work with me. Then, Kerry walks in and my group ends up growing over time. I had no intention of being a full-time powerlifting coach. I didn't advertise on the internet. I did it for free with my friends for a couple of years before I ever made money off of doing it. So all of a sudden, once I start making the push to be more serious within the sport, all of a sudden now I'm getting frustrated at my numbers. I'm trying to force things to happen for me and to happen faster. And then when things don't go my way, the frustration and the aggravation is just really taking a hold of me and it's controlling me. I'm not using it to my advantage. Instead, I'm letting it control me and affect my performance. And then it's everybody else's fault at that point. So with the lifters, I kind of also had that same, it's like, yeah, keep going. You hit a PR, let's hit a 30-pound PR, let's do this. And this went on for a long period of time. And when I felt something was slowing down, We changed the program, same thing. People would hit these huge PRs, let it keep running, let it keep running, let it keep running. And of course now, like over time, I've kind of chilled out a little bit with that, and I started to understand more of a lot of the lessons I learned early on. I wasn't ready to actually learn them. I heard them, like I heard the words that he was telling me, or he had typed to me, and I was reading them, but I wasn't really listening. And even then, I didn't have that knowledge base where I could really understand that. So fast forward even, we start doing way more intense training, and I'm letting people just run it. We did this meet, it's in October of 2019, I think. We did this meet, and everybody's just grinding out reps on the platform. There's a lot of energy. It's a lot of fucking fun, right? But then a lot of those people who were grinding out those reps, they made huge total PRs. All of a sudden got stuck, and then everything started sliding backwards after that point, right? And then it's like one of those where it just really wakes you up to, there's a reason why all of these older lifters and older coaches who have great track records have this process in place, this long-term development plan in place to allow lifters to kind of mature at their own rates. A lesson I had to learn the hard way. So it was October 2019 because then 2020 happened, right? So we're still kind of pushing hard, but I'm at this point where I kind of don't know what to do. And it's one of those crossroads where like, this is going to be a learning experience. So then when Corona happened, I got a lot of time to I was coaching a lot of hours and a lot of people, and I had this opportunity to sit down and there's just no noise anymore, like in front of me. And I'm just there with my thoughts and working out these problems. And then I started to realize that like, hey, we don't know when meets are coming back. We don't know what the situations are going to be. A lot of people don't even have places to train. Like we're even trying to figure that stuff out. This is the time to be patient and really just kind of allow the training process to kind of take on a life of its own and for our results to emerge appropriately at the end. And my job as a coach is just to guide that process. So it didn't matter what program we were doing, those basic character values of attention, focus, hard work, grit, perseverance, all of those things, it didn't matter what the program was. The people who brought that to the program were the ones who got better. It didn't matter whether we did a Shaco program, a linear program, more heavy singles. It didn't matter. All that mattered was what the person brought to that program. That's what was driving results. So I started changing the things up that we were doing before, not being as aggressive, but allowing things to kind of really stabilize and take shape and take form. So over time, what I started to realize is I started giving like groups. So we have like training groups, and I started giving them the same exact programs. And some people were just responding a lot better. Like they were recovering better and stuff. When you talk to people, it's, they had their sleep taken care of, they're eating better, their stress management. They had their ducks in a row, and the ones who weren't responding well just didn't, right? So for me, it's like, this is the time that we can start really teaching the skills of high performance. The discipline and the things that you need to do in order to achieve high level results. Because like I said, every single one of these lifters has the ability to compete at a national stage. I don't care where you're starting from that race. If you're starting at the start line, you're close to that finish line. Every single person has that opportunity. They just need to be given the tools in order to handle that opportunity. So we started focusing a lot more on those things, and I started realizing like the more we focused on those things, the better people's results were. So in a lot of cases, sometimes Jess, from J Birdie Fitness here, the thing we're working on now in her training is her sleep, is being in bed at a certain time, being off our phone at a certain time, and just really making that a habit, because that's responsible for energy, focus, mood. We can't increase performance until we get that set. Once that's set, we'll work on the next thing. So it's a complex problem to solve that's far outside the abilities of an Excel spreadsheet to solve. And unfortunately, the improvements in technology are great, but unfortunately it's ruining the sport of powerlifting. We're losing coaching, and all we're gaining is programmers. So I didn't have a positive role model growing up, and if it wasn't for sports, I never would have had them. And sometimes it was a coach, sometimes it was just a player who was a little better than me, a little older, who pushed me. So I had all of these role models in my life that set the stage and set the tone for what it means to develop high levels of performance. And this doesn't necessarily mean external outcomes. I don't care about the external outcomes. If you do those things right, the external outcomes take care of themselves. If you don't do these things right, the external outcomes are the outcomes that you earn, whether it's good or bad. So if you're not controlling your sleep, your nutrition, any of that stuff, it's not the fucking program. Most programs out there are absolutely fine and will absolutely deliver results. It's what you bring to the program. So if you're not doing those things and you don't hit a PR, the first thing people want to do is blame a program or something else. The coach, so they'll switch coaches or they'll quit the sport. And that's not how this works, right? So it all falls down to our understanding of the rate of progress in powerlifting. So we always want to hit PRs at every competition we do. There's such a short-sighted mindset in this sport. So if you're coming into this sport and you're brand new, you're at that start line somewhere, right? And you're looking at that finish line, the first thing everybody wants to do is just mad dash towards it. So it'll be a lot of volume. This program worked for this person who did well, so I want to do this. In any sport, to develop high level of skill, it takes a long time. You learn the fundamentals first. Technique fucking matters, and you need to develop that. But there's a skill to being able to coach that and develop that technique in adults who, once we hit the age of 25, it's much harder to learn new skills. It's not impossible. It just takes a greater skill to be able to teach those skills. A skill I'm still learning. But I've gotten much better at over the years because of that. So the progress the coach needs to allow to emerge. It can't be forced. And I made a post about this today. So Alyssa had competed yesterday when I had filmed this. So this is Monday. She competed on Sunday. So Alyssa, the last time she competed was February of 2020. So it was right before coronavirus had hit. And she hit a total PR. I forget how much, maybe 5 kilos. And it was a 5 kilo total PR from nationals in October. So that's pretty good progress. She had missed a bench that she had hit then, so it could have been a little bit more. But either way, she improved her total by 5 kilos in 4 months. And then coronavirus happened. But the USAPL had increased the qualifying totals. So it put her 20 kilos below a qualifying total. So we had a conversation, we're like, we'll use regionals as a competition. You place at it, you can get your invite to nationals that way. That was kind of our plan to do that. But then the pandemic hits, and there is no regionals. There are no gyms. So Alyssa had bought a setup for her house at the time, but now she's been training in person forever with me and with the coach that she had before me. So which was at the same gym. So she's been literally training with people for a long period of time. So this is a big change. So she buys stuff and now she has to train alone. And now we have to work on things and build up. And you've competed 2 nationals and now all of a sudden you're 20 kilos behind. And 20 kilos to put on your total is quite a bit. So, especially when you've been lifting for a long time. So we started training, and obviously when this hits, you're just not worried about it at that moment in time because there's so much uncertainty. And what I think the pandemic did for a lot of people is it allowed them to kind of embrace that uncertainty and just kind of focus on each day of training. Like you almost become grateful just to be able to train because you know a lot of people don't have access to stuff. And there's just, jobs are being shut down. You can't go places. You're being locked down. You're just grateful to be able to do something other than sit on your couch and worry and that you have access to stuff. So I do think that being grateful plays a role into high performance too. So she started training. Things were going really well. They're going really well. We're hitting bigger and bigger numbers. And then all of a sudden the total's starting to get close to what you would need for nationals. And meets are starting to come up again. She signs up for one. So we literally had this conversation where I told her, we're not going to force the numbers in order to get you to qualify. You're going to hit what you've earned to hit on that platform based off of your performance in the gym. If you're 2.5 kilos behind it, we're not going to stretch something to try to force it because that's how you lose momentum and have a bad day. So this is a far cry from what I was doing before when we're just grinding out reps on the platform. So, we continue to train. She hits her, so she goes into her test and hits all these numbers that she needs to hit in order to qualify. But the number she hit put her right at the qualifying total. But these were all executed very well. They weren't grindy. And they're all big PRs on the platform. So we put it on the paper. She had to go 9 for 9. She goes 9 for 9. Everything looks easy. And the biggest comment that I saw from people when they responded to me and even responding to her, besides like the congratulations, great job, that type of thing, was all of those looked effortless. And I remember when I had first started coaching, when you watch Russian lifters on the platform, everything looks effortless. And I thought it was just because it was the way that they trained, but I really didn't understand this process. But Americans are always grinding stuff out and really stretching things and pushing things and all of that stuff. Just two different philosophies. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I just have started to lean back towards to where I started from and just understanding more of the concepts of that. So in training, what I started to do as a coach is just be more patient, not forcing things when they're not there. So like, for example, on the bench press, we start at 70% for 5x5. I'm making these numbers up. I'd have to actually go back and look at where Alyssa started at. 70% for 5x5. So let's say they do that week 1 and they put RPE 7. And it looks easy. I'm looking at the film, so I'm like, okay. So then we go 75% 5x5. So then they do that and it's RPE 8.5. So then the following week we repeat it, RPE 8. Following week we repeat it, RPE 7. Right? So then I'm like, okay, let's increase it again. But because I looked at the video, it definitely looked harder than the 70% a few weeks ago. So maybe now I only go up to 77%. And we do the same thing, starts at an 8, week 2 it goes down to a 7. And then I go up to 80%. And usually once we get into that 80% 5x5, this is where it starts getting really fucking hard. So I think with Alyssa, we repeated 80% 5x5 for weeks. And then all of a sudden it started to fly. Like I want to say it was like 4 or 5 weeks we repeated the same thing. And then it's really starting to cruise. And then we moved up to 85% for 5s. And that kind of looked like 80% starting out. Very doable, but hard. And we did that for a few weeks, and then we're hitting 90% for 4s. And once we get to that point, I kind of know that like there's something bigger there. So Alyssa's best meet bench was 92.5 kilos. She had hit that, but then she'd missed it in 3 straight meets. So it was one of those weights that we had hit, but that it just wasn't ready to be stable weight. So there's something that we're doing. So one of the things that I think did matter was our volume might have been too low before, because volume is really important to help stabilize weight. So I don't think we were doing enough volume. So we added that in. And then just being more patient. You don't always have to beat the number, right? You need to find small wins, but you can find them in a number of different ways. So if we're repeating 80% 5x5 every week, and it starts as a 9, and then it's an 8, well, you made progress. You just overloaded efficiency there. You're getting stronger, right? You're moving it faster. There's wins there, and you just need to understand those things, and most people do. So we did all of this. She hit 95 kilos pretty easily in the gym, and she had even hit 97.5 1 out of 2 times that she had taken it in her test. So the meet yesterday, we had 92.5 kilos on there as a second attempt, and I felt it looked like a comfortable opener. And then 95 kilos she smoked on her third attempt. Now there probably wasn't a lot more there, because now we're getting into, and I'm talking about stabilizing performance. 97.5 is there some days, isn't others, right? It probably requires a lot more things to go perfect. The meet moved really quick because there's only 8 people in one flight. So there's a number of variables there. She just squatted pretty heavy. She was kind of nervous during squats. And she had hit a 5 kilo squat PR before it. And it moved well, but it's still heavy weight. And then immediately she's into warming up for bench. So there's a lot of variables that might go against the 97.5 that on a different day, maybe it'd be there. But again, we're not trying to force things, right? So she hit the 95 kilos there. For deadlifts, like I think this is a fun thing to kind of look at, is on the platform was only her second heavy competition style deadlift since May. So we had pulled a heavy deadlift in May, and I think she hit her first 400 deadlift then. So 391 was what she hit in February, and that was a PR. So comes May, I think she hits 400, 402, whatever the kilo conversion is there. And then we don't do another competition style deadlift until she tested for this meet. So, you know, this meet being in March, it's like 10 months. That's a long time to go. But we were building up weaknesses, right? So if you can take lifts that the numbers are far behind that comp lift, you can really build up those weak areas, and then you put it together in the comp lift, good things happen. This is how you stabilize progress. It doesn't just require, I think a lot of cases, if you're just doing the comp lifts, it just requires so much. You're just putting so much on that muscle-centric view, which, yes, okay, that may matter, but that's only one piece of the puzzle. There's so many other things that have to go into it. So we really built up these other lifts and stuff, especially her sumo deadlift. So when she had started, her sumo deadlift was hundreds of pounds behind her conventional deadlift. So we had built up her sumo deadlift. I think she pulled 380 or something in a sumo deadlift. So it got really close to her conventional deadlift when she first started. Doing doubles or triples in the mid 200s was really fucking hard. And that was 100 pounds less than her comp deadlift at the time. So building that up and getting it close, and just what she did too was just understand, learn. She became a student of the sport. She's always wanted to learn more, but she became a student of the sport even more. Like listening to me when I'm coaching other people and starting to like learn that process of making decisions, the technique stuff, the paying attention to details, the being just involved and focused on that process and not worrying about what the numbers are. And of course, it's human nature to worry about the numbers, but to be able to bring it back, to talk yourself, to be like, hey, I know if I build this up, there's going to be something at the other end. And so when she went to that competition, that deadlift was only the second time, her second competition style deadlift in the last 10 months. And she pulled 407 really easy to secure a qualifying total for nationals and a 20 kilo total PR. In February of 2020, she squatted 336 with her feet a little inside shoulder width and wearing heels. We worked on opening up that stance. She was in flats and she put 5 kilos on her squat. That's being involved in the process right there. We've rebuilt her squat over a year and she's squatting more. And even then the 5 kilo PR was a lot easier than what she had hit that February before. Now that's Alyssa's progress, right? She tracks her eating, she tracks her sleep, she takes care of business that she needs to take care of. And there are times where even you do that, it's not going to work out as well. So I have another lifter, Mike, who bench has always been a lift he's kind of struggled with. So same thing, right? We run it the same way. So we ran it the same way. It didn't grow the same way that Alyssa's did towards the end. It was going well, like he's hitting weights at higher percentages than what he's used to, building some volume there. And he hit his best bench with better technique and easier than he had hit before. So that was a win, and that's kind of become more stable. But that took a year to become stable. So now when we cycle back through, instead of 80% for 5x5, he's actually doing 80% for 5x6. So for him, it's just requiring a little bit more to grow into those new numbers. But we're not trying to force it to be there. We didn't just throw an extra 2.5 or 5 kilos or 5 pounds or whatever on that bar to hit that PR for the bench. It wasn't there. We just repeated it with better technique. We took the total PR and we moved on and we started the process again. But this time, we don't have new numbers. So we're not really starting over. We're just continuing to grow. And so now he's at 80% for 5x6. He has a meet in May. And my guess is if we're doing that, then he's going to be at that 85, 5x5. He's probably going to be hitting 90% for triples or fours. This is probably going to be a nice bench PR. It's just taking a little bit longer. And for whatever reason that is, maybe there's more work stress. He's not sleeping as well. There's a number of things that go into that, but you can't force that progress. You got to just let it happen. But at the same time, his squat moved. He had a nice squat PR. But now we broke apart the deadlift and we're building it back up. So his best pull in the gym was 672, but he could never hit it on the platform. And, you know, his knees would come in, the bar would roll away, his back would round, and he'd get stuck. But now he had hit 633, and it looked like he could have at least doubled it as a third attempt in December, which is only 20 pounds behind his best comp deadlift. And now we're in a spot where we cycled back through, and now we're in a spot, now we can start hitting some PRs with those new numbers, and there's probably a deadlift PR there. So maybe this time around, the squat kind of stabilizes, but we see a bench PR and a deadlift PR, and there's our wins, right? And then we get back to training with the new numbers, the volume, and you get that rate of progress that happens. And it's just, you just got to be patient. So my other training partner, Lindsay, when she started, her feet were really close, the knees would come in hard, then back out on her squat. And I think the biggest thing that we needed to work on was not only like working on the areas to get her into better physical positions to perform the lifts, but a mental approach to it. And so for her, her best meet squat is 292. And I saw that, and it's like, man, if we can get her wider, it'll probably put weight on her deadlift. It'll definitely put weight on her squat, but it's going to take a long time. And because we're in person, we can have these conversations. So we really built up. There were a ton of box squats, building up good mornings, using gear, equipment. So her day 4 was, I mean, for the last almost year, she was in equipment on her day 4 doing a lot of her volume. And she had hit her first 315 pound squat. So we put, you know, 20 pounds on her squat, but it took 60 weeks. We didn't do a heavy squat over that period of time. We talked about the process. We got the things squared away. And the best part of it is, and this probably plays even a bigger role, is the mental approach to it. Not allowing frustration to take over, understanding the training process, paying attention and focusing on the small details, and becoming a student of the sport. And that, combined with the targeting the weaknesses and doing the things right, allowed her to progress a little bit faster. And some people, it's going to take longer. You just can't force it to happen. And, you know, a sport where everybody's starting at different spots. Yes, if somebody's really close to the finish line and they have an opportunity to win a national championship or set a world record or American record, yeah, then you throw everything at it and it doesn't matter, right? That's when you put the weight on the bar at a competition and you let them grind it out or fucking miss. But if they don't have that opportunity, why force it? So like Alyssa goes 9 for 9, builds a ton of momentum. All the lifts were smooth. She wasn't grinding them out. Yeah, she's probably pretty fucking sore today, but we take one day off and then we're back into training using new numbers. So now our volume's slowly going up at the pace set by the lifter. It's not being forced. It's literally just allowing the lifter to set the pace and the coach just shuffling pieces around to make sure that they stay healthy, they're still progressing, and we're working on all the things we need to work on. So Alyssa was a little nervous during squats. I could see her legs shaking when she unracked it. So that's something we're going to work on, is learning how to come back into the moment and control our physiology a little bit more. One of the things that I think I'm going to have her do, and I haven't tried this yet, is we're going to do squats with our short rest periods, which we do a lot, like an 8x3 with 60 to 90 seconds rest. But we're going to practice breathing drills in between. So we're going to literally practice on getting the heart rate up and all of those things. You know, when you're doing physical activity, you get the same physiological response as you do when you're starting to get fatigued. So then we're going to work on bringing back our physiology back to where it needs to be to do the next set and just repeat it over and over so that when we go to step on that platform at nationals this time, we can bring ourselves back in when that physiology starts acting up on us. That's what coaching is. And progress, right? Everybody wants to look at the Excel spreadsheet. And, you know, I'm going to use like Mike as an example with his bench, where, yeah, he didn't PR a bench, even though all of training said he's going to PR this bench. And, you know, you always probably want to like crumble it up and try something new, but we don't have to. Let's just keep going and repeat the process again, but let them dictate how this process works. So now, because we've been using the same numbers for a period of time, now we're able to build more volume. I didn't force more volume when things weren't working out. I allowed it. So he competed in December, we're in March. I didn't come right back around and we started there. We just kept going. And now, in March, so 3 months after that, now he's at that 80% for 5x6. So we're seeing even improvements from when training was going well before. So, and maybe this time around, he competes in May. Let's say he hits a 10 or 15 pound PR and it's really smooth, right? So now we've put 10, 15 pounds on in 2 years. And then maybe by the end of the year, he hits another 5 pounds. 10 pounds on a lift each year is pretty good. So it's one of those situations where you just gotta let it play out. And you can't force things, and Excel can't do this. And in a lot of cases, it's not the fucking program. It's having a conversation, being like, hey, how's your sleep? That's what we gotta work on. Like, how's your head? That's what we gotta work on. How's your attitude in the gym? That's what we gotta work on. And that's what I've done with these are all different people who've run very similar programs, obviously, but we just focus on different things. That's where the individualization of programming comes from, is taking that individual and targeting their individual weaknesses, having different conversations. Like, hey, we got to work on having fun and training and just becoming a student of the sport and enjoying it. And like, understand that, when you miss a lift, it doesn't dictate future performance. Like, it'll work out fine, or we gotta, maybe it becomes, we got to do more volume or something. And don't get me wrong, like, those things happen. But I think in most cases, it doesn't need more volume. Sometimes it just needs, man, I put an exercise in and I thought this was going to work and they're doing everything the same and you're just not seeing the outcome that you want. Well, then you change things up and you try something new. Like, there are changes in the program that need to happen, but maybe it's, like I said, the sleep, the attitude, there's a number of things. So like, once you start putting it all together and you're patient, the PRs start to happen. So Alyssa, in a year, added the 20 kilos that, to be honest, I wasn't sure that was going to happen. And it was one of those, maybe we missed nationals for 1 year, and then I think by the following year you'll be going and it'll be fine. But she was able to put it all together in that period of time, and I think that shows a lot about her embracing the process and how easy those lifts looked. And that's what it should look like on the platform. You earn the right to lift more weight. So we're looking at rate of progress in powerlifting is going to be completely individualized. And you got to let that progress emerge. You can't force it. Just because somebody had hit this at a previous meet, just throwing that weight in the bar to see. When I see lifters now, like the beginner to intermediate lifters grinding out reps on the platform, yeah, it's fun. It gets cheers. It gets a lot of likes when you're hitting PRs and stuff like that. But at the same time, it comes with a future cost. You can only grind out so many reps, and you're grinding them out. So one of the things that Eastern Europeans talk about a lot is that there are sticking points, right? So there's like something in the translation of this that gets lost. There are points where we have less leverage than others throughout the range of motion. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but that a sticking point is an inefficiency in the nervous system. So like when you see somebody shaking or slowing down or those things, right? So like when we think about the translation of that and like what I've seen in the gym and progressing onto the platform, and especially by doing it the other way of forcing PRs before, is what that means is that the body's not ready to be handling those weights yet. Yes, on a good day, you're capable of it, right? If you're grinding it out and it's a true 10, yeah, today you might hit it. If it was a different day, you might not, right? It's not stable. It's one of those you're hoping for the best. You're not ready to be putting that on the platform yet. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a point of putting that weight on the bar if you can win something big or qualify for something big, break a record, like those types of things. But those scenarios are very few and far between. There's no reason to put that weight on the bar. Let's say, if you can qualify for nationals pretty easily, but you're just trying to grind something out for the sake of saying you hit this number, you're chasing numbers. And at some point, you can't keep chasing them. It ends up crumbling and going backwards. So when I go back and I think of the Russians and how their platform experience and that definition of sticking points that they discuss, it's because they're putting weight on their lifters that they know that they can hit, that it's stable performance. And that's what we saw from Alyssa yesterday when everything was just smooth, there's no grinding reps out, it's stable performance. That's what we're looking to do. So even if a lifter has to lift less weight with me on the platform and it's stable, I want to see that stable performance increase over time. I don't care so much at the PRs because I know if we focus on the process and do the things we're supposed to do, the outcomes take care of themselves. But the second you stop focusing on this and you start chasing numbers, you chase the PRs away is what happens. But if you focus on the process and you ignore the PRs out there and you just are patient, the PRs come to you. It's a much different strategy. It's much less stressful, much more enjoyable. But at the end of the day, you still gotta fucking work hard for it. And we work hard. I have 2 new people who literally texted me a couple days apart, both saying that this is the hardest training that they've ever done. And one of them ran a West Side program before and another was running a Shakeout program before. And those are both very hard programs to run. We do work very hard. And that's also why as a coach, I feel it's really important to teach these tools and to teach them how to make good decisions, because recovery does become an issue that we need to address often at times, and not chasing numbers, because it's easy to hit a 5-pound PR and then want that next 5 pound before letting that weight just settle, like hit the same weight over and over and over. Because once you've hit that 5-10 pound PR, let that weight really settle into its adaptation, and then it's there. You have a guaranteed PR on the platform. Then you take those new numbers, and then same thing. Then training's hard again. You let it settle in, hit the new numbers, and that's how training happens that's how progress happens over time. Stable progress. And don't get me wrong, there'll still be times where everybody's going to get stuck. But at the end of the day, the ones who have the grit to deal with that, to be patient, to make good training decisions, to not chase numbers, to not allow frustration to win, those lifters are the ones who are going to get to the finish line first. And don't get me wrong, some people have a head start, but the ones who are more willing to do that have a better chance of reaching that finish line in the end. I'm going to cover these topics more in detail in later videos and stuff, but for now, follow me on Instagram. It's KW Canner Team Precision Powerlifting Systems.